Okay, today I am working on a washer pump, and I got this one. It was in pieces, so there's 4 screws that hold this on to the top there, and I've got a couple of tops here. This one actually is got a broken piece of plastic on the bottom, so I'm going to use the piece off of this one and kind of combine these two, but the first thing is to get this little motor here running. And if it doesn't run, you take these little screws out here. And then this little cover comes off there. And it's got a little rubber seal in here, and this one is just as hard as a rock. But the secret here is this whole thing will come out, but you know, it's just stiff as can be, so it's all bound up in there, as you can see. Now we're going to finish taking that apart, and I'm going to take these brushes out here first, but before I pull that out, of course. But being stiff like that, it isn't going to turn very good. And to get the brushes out, you take this screw out on this side, like so, and it's got a contact and a lock washer, and then on this side it's got this square nut, and at that point you should be able to slip that brush out of there. You want to be careful with it. Oh, I may have to take that on up a tad. There she came out of there. And so you'll see that brush, and it sets in there with that. You can see that's still in there, and that brush is still in there. So I'll go ahead and take the other side out, and then we can pull the armature out. Okay, I've got the other brush out here, as you can see, and then basically the whole thing just lifts out of there. There's a couple of, you can see this has got some little burrs on it, but it looks like it's in pretty good shape. Oh, this may be, oh no, that just looks like it's a spot of glue. So anyway, we're going to clean this up, clean this shaft up, clean the old grease out of here, and then we'll put it all back together, and then hopefully we'll be able to spin it. Now, the magnet does grab the armature as you go around, so it's kind of a feel to it, but it should move fairly easily when you put it back together. So we'll go ahead and do that and clean everything up, and then we'll get back to videotaping. Okay, you can see I put the armature in the drill press, and the purpose is, you can see this little ring right here. I clean that up, and you want it to be clean and not pitted. And what I do is I take a piece of this and put it on there and polish it. Okay, and this happens to be 220 grit sandpaper, and I cut a little thin piece that just fits in there like such, and I'm going to kind of get it in there like that, and I'm going to start that up, and I'm just going to polish that a little bit. And what that does is that cleans that armature up, so the brushes will contact it real good. Back working on the water pump today. A lot of these get broken off. I hope you can see that there. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to take a saw blade on a Dremel, and I'm going to take and I'm going to cut that off real square. real square, just like that. Now those have a tendency to split down the sides, so I'm going to glue them, and I'm really going to hold that. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to take it over to the drill press and run that drill and just barely gently run this hole down in there. That hole corresponds with this little gadget here. And they call these vacuum connectors, and you can get a pack of them. I use the smaller size. They have tabs on them, but I broke the tabs off, and then I took a knife and I smoothed them down real nice so it's perfectly round. And the other thing I'm going to do before I insert that in there is I'm going to cut that off so it's half that size. Like so. Okay, and then that's going to end up going in like that. And before I glue it, since when you push the plastic pipe on it, you put a lot of stress on this plastic, I am going to put the plastic pipe on there, then glue it in. This pipe right here just basically shields, this spins down in here, it spins it, so you create a pressure, a little pump. But this thing's a little loose, so I'm going to have to put a little glue on it too. Okay, you can see I mixed my glue up and I glued that all back together real good. I also put a drill in that hole just to make sure that glue didn't get in there and I could pull it back. And I'm going to take that clamp and clamp it together. And I'm going to set that up and let that basically dry for a while. Okay, as you can see, there's a little notch cut out here, and there's actually a flat side on the magnet. The flat side goes down, and that little notch there is so when the brushes go in, they're not going to hit anything. And that pops down over that plastic, so it goes flat down in there like that. And the next thing is there's a little board that goes sideways in there. And you can see that goes all the way down. If it's not flush, you don't have your magnet in right. And by the way, I've used this 3-in-1 oil, but I put 1 drop of oil down in that pinhole. And you can see I've got the armature cleaned off real nice, and it's kind of a bitch to get it down in there. There we go. Okay, now I got that in the right spot, so that should spin freely like that. Okay. I'm going to get my brushes and stuff ready, and then we'll put the rest of it back together. Okay, the brushes here aren't that tough to get in. What I find is if you grab them with a little pair of pliers, a pair of needle nose like that, you're able to get them down in there. And the object is to get the square part in the hole and get that down there. And I think I'm just about there. I'm just being real gentle with them. There we go. And that brush is just a little low, so I'm going to pull it up a little bit. And all my armature came out. There we go. Okay, the next step is here you got to put in your little tabs. I'm going to hold this down so that armature doesn't fall out, but this gets put in the back side, so you got your two powers there. for your electric wires, and then that little square nut, I didn't show you that very well, but it's a little square brass specialty nut goes in there, and that bottoms out on that brush and holds it down. So I'm just going to tighten those, not too tight because this is Bakelite. I mean, you want them to hold the brushes down, but you can break this old Bakelite. Now I'm going to look in here, and both of my brushes are riding pretty much where I want them to. So I'm going to call that good. There was an old piece of cardboard washer on this, and an insulation thing, but I really don't think you need it. So I'm going to not put it back on. It cracks and falls in there and causes problems. There's little notches right here and right here, so when you get that in there, it is keyed. It'll only go one way. And then these little bitty screws, two of them, one of them goes in there, and one of them goes in there. So, anyway, I'm going to have to go get a smaller screwdriver to tighten those on down, but, okay, if you don't get this in there, then you got a problem. I put a screw in there. These are a specialty self-tapping Phillips head, surprisingly. But anyway, this thing goes in here like this. Okay, if you don't put it in there, you can't get it in later. So this obviously goes in with the shaft, and I'm trying to hit my screw there. Said that's a Phillips head. Let's see if I can get a second one started here. Get a third one started and a fourth one. Seem to be going in straight. Maybe it is. Okay, well I'm going to go ahead and tighten those on there, but you'll see this goes in there like that. And just to make note, before I put this all back together, I hit it with some of this Worth rubber care. It's for professional use only. I used it anyway, but anyway, I put it on there, and it works on this old Bakelite type stuff real well too. So I gotta wait for my pump over there to dry. That plastic has to dry a while, but anyway, we'll get the rest of that put together as soon as that dries out. Got my trusty battery charger hooked up. You can see that spins nicely. Makes a lot of noise since there isn't any load on it, but anyway, we've got that all refurbished and it works nicely. I find the brushes in these are never worn out because people don't use them that much, so most of them can be refurbished, so there you go. Okay, just got home from the Cuba Car show, and they were giving out trophies. I'm not really big on trophies. I think they give too many of them. Anyway, that's politics. I'm a car guy. Hey, all this glue is set up nicely. You'll notice I put a lot of it on there. You can't see it in the bottle. And I also secured that, so things are there. I've got everything glued on. I've got this little rubber pipe. I got that, I think, at Rural King, which was a little hardware. Kind of if you want to fix your plow, they've got this stuff, but there's a lot of those in rural Missouri. But I cut it about even with the bottom of the nut when you push the nut all the way up on the stem. And that way it'll bottom out and it'll work to get on your little nipple there. Now when I push this on, there's a steel rod in here. I think you can see that. Well, this one I've got out of there so you can really see it. And it's got this brass fitting, and it's got, it's a split fitting. So this thing will go and press in there. And so both ends get pressed in. This one's already on the pump side with the motor. Now when you push this in, you want to pull up a little bit because this thing needs to ride at the bottom. If it pulls up to the top, it actually kind of seals the valve off. So yeah, if you blow through it, you push it down and you can blow through the vent down here. It's got a little rubber diaphragm in it. So anyway, what you want to do is press that on there, and you can see I've already got that little split piece on there. And it'll pull that on down if you got enough to get it started. Okay, I got my nuts started on there. Now I'm going to go ahead so this thing doesn't spin around. And I'm going to press it. These are threaded and you can screw them on, but with this surgical pipe is what I call it. I'm going to spit in the end. I'm going to spare you that. I'm going to put a little spit in the end so it's wet and it's got a little lubricant. And I'm going to go ahead and work that on down like that. And you can see I've got a pretty good length there. And that's going to fit in the bottle nicely. You don't want it kinked down here. But I'm going to go ahead and get a nut driver. I think that's a 1/2 inch. I'm going to go ahead and get a nut driver and tighten that on up in. Then we'll put it in the bottle and test it. So, okay, I kind of screwed up the last take, so I'm going to try this again. Anyway, I put some fluid in here. I like the nice blue washer fluid. It's kind of pretty. And put this hose on here, this flexible hose, surgery hose is what I use, but I got that at a Rural King. And if everything went together right and I hit the hot lead here, we should see some liquid squirting out of there, and I mean at a pretty good rate. Oh, look at that. Oh, yeah. In fact, I'm getting a siphoning action on that. I've got it down in my sink here, but if I don't get that higher, I think I'm going to siphon all the pretty blue liquid, so I'm going to lift that up high and get that back in there. But that basically, I'm going to take that off of there, and I'm going to unplug my battery charger. But that basically completes that. That's going in a Austin Princess limo, but it's actually out of a Rolls Royce. I got the bottle from Albers. And one thing you got here is there's a soft rubber tube, and this is, just a real soft rubber tube. But I had these CAD plated. They get riveted back on. And a piece of this tube goes at the bottom under these clamps to give the bottle a little support when you put it in there. And this is exactly the same mount on the Rolls-Royce and on the Austin, but the Austin, the next bracket is highly different. There's also a heat shield on these on the V8s, and I'm going to put that on next, but it really doesn't require it for the Austin Princess, but these two holes here is where that heat shield clamps on there, and the old heat shields used to be asbestos, so you got to kind of watch out for them. Okay, here we go. I talked about the heat shield there. I get this stuff you get line like spark plug wires and stuff on modern hot rods, and I lay it out flat and coat it with a good like PRV, material that's heat resistance. But you punch holes in that, you put it on the plate there, and then that goes on the bottom. And there's, I think, a 0BA bolt that goes in each side and holds those on. But since this is for an Austin Princess, they've got the holes in, same bracket and everything. This is the bracket that came off that Austin, and it fits on there like so. But it's a 6-cylinder, so you don't have that manifold sitting under it, so you really don't need the heat shield. But a lot of those are missing on the Rolls Royces. I don't know why people would take them off, but they were asbestos originally, so you got to be careful if you take them apart. You don't want to breathe it in. Okay, here's going to be your little fireside chat. We tested our bottle. We got water in there and such, and so we're all good there, and we rebuilt several of the parts. Now, I talked about the base. I take some insulations that's meant to go around spark plug wires, and I coat it. I cut it, flatten it out, and I made some, I don't know if you can see it in there, but there was some insulation on the bottom of these on a cloud, and what happens is they sit right over the top of the manifold on the B-bank, and they get real hot. So anyway, you introduce that. There's a couple of screws there, 0BA screws, and a couple of nuts on the bottom. But the other thing I'm going to point out about this is this rubber tubing. This is a real soft rubber, and it's like an inch outside diameter, but I got that at a Dickey Bubs, which is a hardware store, kind of a Rural King. You can get your tractor parts and stuff. So anyway, that's the washer bottle, and this is, I guess, 3 in the episode of my Save a Rolls Royce. I glue a few things, and I, sand here and brush there and grease here, but I find if you clean most of these things up and get the old grease out of them, clean the armatures, they work great. So anyway, good luck on your Rolls Royce.